The sheriff's deputy pounded on my front door like he was serving a death warrant, the sharp cracks echoing across the still surface of the lake behind my new home. "Open up! This is an official eviction notice from the Willow Creek HOA. You've got 10 minutes to vacate before we drag you out." His voice boomed, laced with that fake authority small-town lawmen love to wield. But I could see the sweat beading on his forehead under the brim of his hat, the humid South Carolina air turning, his uniform shirt dark at the armpits. I stood there, heart slamming against my ribs, clutching the faded surveyor's map that could unravel their entire illegal empire. But as the HOA president, Evelyn Hargrove, smirked from her perch in the idling SUV across the street, I wondered if I'd pushed too far, if this HOA takedown would cost me everything I'd fought for. That was the moment I realized the war wasn't just about my lake anymore. It was about exposing a scandal that had poisoned this community for decades. But to understand how I got there, facing down badges and bulldozers, we have to go back to the beginning, when the ink on my deed was barely dry. I'd just moved into the old lakeside cabin in Willow Creek, South Carolina, a place I'd bought sight, unseen after my retirement from the Army Corps of Engineers. The air was thick with the scent of pine resin and brackish water, the kind that clings to your skin like a second layer in the August heat. Cicadas buzzed in a relentless chorus, drowning out the distant hum of boat motors on the lake. I remember stepping out of my truck, the gravel crunching under my boots, tasting the faint salt from the nearby marshes on the breeze. It was supposed to be my fresh start, peace after years of mapping flood zones and battling bureaucracy overseas. Little did I know, the real battle was waiting right here, in this gated community where the HOA ruled like a petty dictatorship. The cabin sat on a prime spot, the lake lapping right up to my backyard, its waters dark and inviting under the Spanish, moss-draped oaks. I'd inherited a bit of engineering savvy from my Corps days, so I planned to build a small dock for fishing, maybe teach my grandkids how to skip stones someday. But on day 2, as I unpacked boxes in the living room, the creak of floorboards underfoot, the musty smell of old wood mingling with fresh paint, a sharp rap at the door interrupted me. I opened it to find a woman in her late 50s, silver, hair pulled into a severe bun, pearls choking her neck like a noose. Evelyn Hargrove, she introduced herself, president of the Willow Creek HOA. Her smile was all teeth, no warmth, and her eyes scanned my property like she was appraising it for auction. "Welcome to the neighborhood, Mr. Harlan," she said, her southern drawl dripping with honeyed venom. "But I see you're already planning alterations. That lake? It's community property. Our docks depend on it, and we can't have newcomers thinking they own the water." She handed me a crisp letter, the paper cool and official in my hand, demanding I sign over access rights immediately or face fines. I felt the first stir of outrage bubbling up, hot as the sun-baked dock pilings I'd glimpsed earlier. "Where are you watching from? Comment your city. I want to see how far HOA power reaches. If you've ever been bullied by an HOA, you're going to love this ending. Stick with me." I laughed it off at first, thinking it was some misunderstanding. "Ma'am, the deed says the lake's on my land, private property." But Evelyn's face hardened, her manicured nails tapping against her clipboard like a countdown. She leaned in, the floral perfume she wore clashing with the earthy scent of the lake mud. "Deeds can be flexible. Our HOA bylaws supersede that. We've controlled these waters for 30 years. Your little cabin doesn't change a thing." She turned on her heel, her heels clicking sharply on the porch steps, leaving me staring at the letter. That night, as thunder rumbled in the distance and rain pattered against the tin roof, I pored over the documents by lamplight, the bitter taste of black coffee on my tongue. Something didn't add up. Their claim smelled like corruption, like the kind of illegal land grab I'd seen in war zones where locals lost everything to greedy officials. The next morning, I decided to take a walk around the property, the dew-soaked grass squelching under my boots, the early fog rolling off the lake like a ghost. Birds chirped overhead, their calls sharp against the quiet lapping of water. That's when I spotted their community docks, jutting out from the shared green space, but the pilings extended suspiciously close to my boundary line. I pulled out my old surveying tools from the truck, a habit from my Corps days, and measured it roughly. Sure enough, their docks were anchored on what looked like my submerged land. The realization hit me like a cold splash. They weren't just demanding my lake. They needed it because I controlled their docks. This wasn't pettiness. It was a scandal waiting to be exposed. But Evelyn wasn't done. By noon, another letter arrived. This one via certified mail, the envelope stiff and formal in my hands. Fines for unauthorized landscaping. I'd trimmed a bush near the water's edge. The ink smelled fresh, accusatory. I felt the anger coiling in my gut, tight as a spring. In the Corps, we'd call this reconnaissance, testing the enemy's defenses. I fired back an email citing basic property law, but her reply was swift. Our HOA covenant trumps your assumptions. Pay up or face liens. That's when I dropped my first knowledge bomb on myself, whispering it aloud in the empty kitchen. HOAs can't override state water rights without a recorded easement. And from what I'd seen, theirs was as shaky as quicksand. What would you have done in my place? Drop it in the comments. Ever dealt with an HOA bully? Let's see how many of us there are. The escalation came faster than a summer squall. That afternoon, as I grilled burgers on the back deck, the sizzle of meat mixing with the smoky charcoal scent, the lake breeze cooling the sweat on my neck, I heard engines revving. 2 pickup trucks pulled up to the community dock, workers in HOA-branded vests unloading fencing materials. They started pounding stakes into the ground right along my shoreline, the metallic clangs ringing out like warning shots. Evelyn supervised. From afar, her voice carrying over the water, "Secure the perimeter. We can't let this newcomer sabotage our access." Sabotage? I was the one being fenced out of my own backyard. I marched over, the grass slick underfoot, heart pounding. "What the hell is this?" I demanded, facing Evelyn across the half-erected barrier. She crossed her arms, her pearl earrings glinting in the sun, a smug tilt to her chin. "Protecting community assets. Your lake is disrupting our docks. We've voted to enclose it." The workers paused, hammers hovering, the air thick with tension and the faint, oily smell of their tools. I knew then she had leverage. Her husband was the town mayor, a power lever that let her bend rules like they were made of taffy. Hypocrisy at its finest. She'd fine neighbors for minor infractions, while her own mansion had unapproved additions. That screamed double standards, but I wasn't backing down. Drawing on my engineering background, I pointed to the water line. "You realize adverse possession doesn't apply here? If you've been using my land without permission, that's trespassing, not ownership." It was my second knowledge bomb. Dropped, right in the heat of confrontation, and I saw a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. The first crack in her armor. She waved it off, but her voice sharpened. "We'll see about that in court, Mr. Harlan. Our lawyers eat types like you for breakfast." That night, as lightning flashed over the lake and rain hammered the windows like accusatory fingers, I dug deeper. Poring over old county records online, the glow of my laptop screen harsh against the darkness, I uncovered a nugget, the original. Subdivision plat from 1952 showed the lake as private, not communal. No easement ever recorded. The HOA's claim was illegal, a scandal built on forged permissions. But as I sipped lukewarm tea, tasting the herbal bitterness, a chill ran down my spine. Headlights swept across my driveway. Someone was watching. From the shadows, engine idling softly. If you think HOAs should be held accountable, type yes, so we can get this trending. This isn't just my fight. It's yours too. Tell me if your HOA has ever crossed the line. The harassment ramped up over the next few days. Fines piled up in my mailbox for excessive noise from my truck, for unsightly storage of my surveying gear. Each envelope carried Evelyn's signature, her looping cursive like a taunt. I felt the dread building, a knot in my stomach, but it fueled my defiance. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the lake in fiery oranges, the sweet smell of honeysuckle wafting from the bushes, I confronted a neighbor, old Mr. Jenkins, raking leaves next door. His hands trembled on the rake, the dry rustle of leaves underfoot. "She's got everyone scared," he whispered, glancing around. "Fined me $1,000 last year for painting my fence the wrong shade. But you, owning that lake, that's a threat to her control." His words hung in the air, heavy as the humidity. That's when I found the third knowledge bomb in my research. Under South Carolina law, HOAs must disclose all covenants before purchase, and mine had conveniently omitted the lake dispute. It was a loophole big enough to sink their ship. But as I walked back, the crunch of gravel turning ominous, I heard a splash from the lake. Turning, I saw a figure retreating into the dusk. Someone had tampered with my boundary markers, tossing them into the water. The power shift was coming, but not before betrayal struck. The next morning, a certified letter arrived, not from Evelyn, but from the town hall, a notice of eminent domain hearing, her husband's influence at play. My hands shook as I read it, the paper crinkling, the ink blurring in my vision. They were trying to seize my lake outright. But buried in the fine print was a clue, a reference to an old dock permit from 1985, one that tied their community access directly to my property lines. As I stood on my porch, the wind whipping up waves, on the lake, carrying the faint cry of gulls, I knew the fight was just beginning. Evelyn thought she had me cornered, but she didn't know I'd already mapped out her downfall. What she did next would expose her vulnerability, and almost cost me my home. The smell of impending rain mixed with the metallic tang of resolve in the air. I crumpled the letter, heart racing. This HOA justice was about to get personal. The eminent domain notice felt like a grenade in my mailbox, its explosive potential hidden in the legalese. I stood there on the porch, the morning sun burning my neck, the lake's gentle waves mocking the storm brewing inside me. Evelyn had escalated from fines to full-on seizure, using her husband's mayoral pull like a blunt instrument. But that old dock permit referenced in the fine print, it was a thread I could pull, unraveling their illegal tapestry. In the core, we'd map out enemy positions before striking. This was no different. I crumpled the paper, tasting the bile of anger rising, and headed inside where the air conditioner hummed a steady drone against the rising heat. The battle intensified that very week, a relentless montage of harassment that tested every ounce of my resolve. Monday brought more fines, slapped on my door like unwanted gifts, citing environmental hazards from my untouched shoreline. The paper reeked of fresh printer ink, sharp and chemical. Tuesday, threats via email, Evelyn's words glowing on. My screen in the dim kitchen light. "Cooperate, or we'll make sure no contractor touches your property again." I could hear her smug tone through the pixels, her drawl echoing in my mind. Wednesday, sabotage. I woke to the screech of tires peeling away, finding my fence posts uprooted, dirt clods scattered like shrapnel, the earthy smell mixing with the faint gasoline fumes left behind. By Thursday, the smear campaign kicked in. Whispers rippled through Willow Creek like ripples on the lake after a stone's throw. Neighbors avoided eye contact at the local diner, where the sizzle of bacon and clink of coffee cups usually fostered small talk. Old Mr. Jenkins pulled me aside in the parking lot, his breath heavy with onion from his sandwich. "They're saying, 'You're a troublemaker, Harlan, claiming you forged your deed to steal community land.'" His eyes darted, fearful, the gravel crunching under our shifting feet. It wasn't just me anymore. The HOA's grip was choking the whole town. Mrs. Alvarez down the street got hit with retroactive fees for her garden, all because she'd spoken up at a meeting. Kids couldn't play near the docks without supervision. Permits. The corruption was spreading, a virus Evelyn controlled. What would you have done in my place? Drop it in the comments. Ever dealt with an HOA bully? Let's see how many of us there are. I couldn't let it stand. Drawing on my engineering tactics, I treated this like a fortification breach. Dig deep, find the weak points. That afternoon, under a sky heavy with thunderheads, the air thick with ozone and impending rain, I drove to the county archives. The building smelled of dusty paper and mildew, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry hornets. Rifling through yellowed files, my fingers gritty with age-old grime, I uncovered blueprints from the 1980s. The original dock construction, funded by the HOA, but built on what was then undisputed private land. No transfer ever filed. It was my first knowledge bomb of this phase. Under riparian rights law in South Carolina, water access can't be claimed without explicit deeded permission, and theirs was as absent as ethics in Evelyn's playbook. But knowledge alone wasn't enough. I needed allies. Enter Lila Thompson, a feisty retiree from the next cul-de-sac, her wild red curls framing a face etched with laugh lines and determination. We'd met at the community potluck, before the war, where her spicy gumbo had burned my tongue with cayenne heat, the steam carrying hints of bay leaves. "I've hated that witch for years," she confided over the phone, her voice crackling with static from the storm outside. She blocked my solar panels because they clashed with the aesthetic, while her pool house violates every code. Lila had a personality like a firecracker, short-fused and explosive, and she knew half the town. Together, we rallied a small group, Jenkins, for his historical gossip, a young lawyer named Marcus who'd been fined for his dog's bark. Our counterattack began in earnest. We met in my cabin, the wood stove crackling with pine logs, the smoky warmth battling the chill seeping through the windows. Maps spread on the table, coffee mugs steaming. We plotted like a war room. I used my surveying skills to remap the property lines digitally, the click of my mouse echoing in the quiet room. Lila dug into Evelyn's past. Turns out, her pristine record hid a vulnerability. A decade-old embezzlement scandal from her time on the school board, swept under the rug by her husband's influence. It was a chink in her armor, personal and petty, revealing her hypocrisy, preaching rules while breaking them for gain. The stakes broadened when the HOA targeted the community at large. They announced emergency assessments to fund their legal fight against me, hitting every household with surprise bills. Protests bubbled up at the next meeting, held in the stuffy clubhouse where the air conditioner rattled and the scent of stale popcorn lingered from movie nights. Voices rose accusatory, the tension thick enough to touch. Evelyn presided like a queen, her pearls clicking as she adjusted her microphone. "This is for the greater good," she drawled, but I saw the sweat on her upper lip, the first sign of cracks under pressure. If you think HOAs should be held accountable, type yes, so we can get this trending. Harassment escalated to personal lows. One night, as frogs croaked in a symphony from the lake's edge and moonlight silvered the water, I heard glass shatter. My truck's windshield, spiderwebbed and glittering under the porch light, a brick wrapped in a note, "Back off or lose more." The shards crunched under my boots, sharp and unforgiving, my pulse thundering in my ears. Dread coiled in my chest. This wasn't just property anymore. It was safety. But anger overrode it, hot and fueling. In the core, we'd pivot under fire. Here, I did the same, installing cameras that whirred softly in the dark, capturing shadows. Our game-changing find came midweek, during a montage of digging that blurred days into nights. Lila unearthed a whistleblower, an ex-HOA treasurer who'd fled town years ago. Over a crackling video call, his face pixelated but earnest, he spilled, forged permits, skimmed funds funneled into Evelyn's renovations. The air in my study grew stuffy, the glow of screens casting eerie shadows, the taste of victory tentative on my tongue. This was the second knowledge bomb. HOAs are fiduciaries under state law, and misusing funds for personal gain opens them to dissolution petitions, a loophole that could expose their entire scandal. But Evelyn struck back with surprise leverage, a midpoint twist that nearly broke me. Friday brought a bombshell, a historical covenant, unearthed from some dusty vault, claiming the lake as communal since the Civil War era. Her lawyers paraded it at an emergency hearing, the courtroom smelling of polished wood and nervous sweat, the judge's gavel hovering like a threat. "This predates your deed, Mr. Harlan." Evelyn smirked from the stand, her voice smooth as silk but edged with triumph. My allies shifted uncomfortably in the pews, the rustle of papers amplifying the tension. It was a fake resolution. The document looked legit, but my engineering eye spotted inconsistencies in the ink aging, the paper's weave. I pivoted hard, vulnerability hitting like a gut punch. Alone that night, rain lashing the windows in sheets, thunder rumbling like artillery. I doubted everything. The cold beer in my hand did little to numb the fear. What if I lost? The lake wasn't just land, it was my sanctuary, echoes of lost, comrades in its quiet depths. But defiance surged back, warm as the dawn light filtering through clouds the next morning, carrying the fresh scent of washed earth. We countered with forensics. I sent samples of the covenant to a contact from my core days, a document expert. The wait was agony. Days of false calm where fines paused, threats simmered. Then, the third knowledge bomb dropped during a heated confrontation at Evelyn's doorstep. Her mansion loomed, manicured lawns smelling of fresh-cut grass, the hum of sprinklers mocking the drought rules she enforced on others. "Your covenant's a forgery," I said, thrusting the report forward. "Carbon dating shows it's from 2015, not 1865, and under fraud statutes, that's grounds for criminal charges." Her face paled, the pearls at her throat suddenly constricting, a hidden vulnerability laid bare. Her fear of exposure, of losing, the social throne built on lies. The power teetered. Media got wind, local reporters sniffing around, cameras flashing outside the HOA office, the click of shutters sharp against the growing crowd's murmurs. Evelyn's smear backfired, turning neighbors into informants. But as my lawyer's pen hovered over the petition to dissolve the HOA, ink glistening under the desk lamp's glow, a call came in. "They've got one last play, something that could bury you." My heart skipped, the room spinning with the scent of impending doom. What they did next almost made me lose everything. But it also gave me the win of my life. The next 60 seconds will show you exactly how a single document can destroy an entire HOA. If you thought they couldn't stoop lower, you're wrong. And this is where I got my payback. The air grew electric, charged with the promise of justice or ruin. Evelyn's empire was cracking, but the final blow waited just ahead, in the glare of spotlights and the slam of truth. The phone call hit like a sucker punch, the anonymous voice on the line hissing through static. "Evelyn's pulling strings for a midnight vote. They're dissolving your rights before dawn." My hand tightened on the receiver, the plastic cool and slick with sweat, the lake outside my window a black mirror under the moonless sky. Thunder from the fading storm grumbled in the distance, carrying the damp earth scent through the screen. This was their last, desperate play, an illegal maneuver to rewrite the HOA bylaws overnight and cement their scandal. But I wasn't about to let arrogance win. In the core, we'd turn ambushes into advantages, Time to do the same here, exposing this HOA takedown for the justice it demanded. The climax unfolded at the emergency HOA meeting the next evening, held in the packed clubhouse where the air hung heavy with the murmur of anxious neighbors and the faint, acrid smell of overbrewed coffee from the urn in the corner. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows on faces etched with doubt and defiance. Evelyn sat at the head table, her silver bun impeccable, pearls gleaming like armor, but I caught the twitch in her eye, that hidden vulnerability from her embezzlement past, now a weapon in my arsenal. The room thrummed with tension, chairs scraping as people shifted, the wooden floor creaking underfoot. I stood at the back, allies flanking me. Lila with her fiery curls, Marcus the lawyer clutching our petition, Jenkins nodding encouragement. Evelyn banged her gavel, the sharp crack slicing through the chatter. Order! This meeting addresses the Harlan property dispute. Our historical covenant proves the lake is communal. Vote now to enforce it. Her voice dripped with false authority, her drawl thicker than usual, betraying nerves. Whispers erupted, a wave of unease rippling like wind over water. But I stepped, forward, heart pounding, the air tasting metallic with adrenaline. Not so fast, I said, my tone steady despite the knot in my gut. That covenant's a forgery and I've got the proof. Gasps echoed, the room's humidity amplifying every sound. The showdown ignited. Evelyn's face flushed, her manicured nails digging into the table. Lies! Our lawyers vetted it! But Marcus rose, papers rustling, dropping the first knowledge bomb, right there in the heat. Under South Carolina fraud statutes, forged documents invalidate all claims derived from them, and this one's dated wrong, inked with modern chemicals. The crowd leaned in, murmurs swelling, the scent of sweat and anticipation thickening the air. Evelyn waved it off, but her arrogance cracked. She slammed the table, demanding a vote. We'll see who controls this community. Dread spiked as votes trickled in, her cronies nodding approval, the tally board clicking like a ticking bomb. Half the room sided with her, swayed by years of intimidation. Anger boiled in me, hot as the spotlight glaring down. But Lila whispered, "Wait for it," her breath warm on my ear. We had more, the embezzlement files projected on a screen with a click of the remote. The room fell silent, the hum of the projector the only sound, as receipts flashed. Funds siphoned for her pool house disguised as dock maintenance. Exposed, the scandal hit like a thunderclap. Relief flickered when neighbors shifted allegiances, hands raising against her. "This is illegal!" one shouted, the word echoing. Evelyn's hypocrisy laid bare, fining us for petty violations while pocketing thousands. Her petty habits, like spying through binoculars at dawn, now fueled the backlash. But she doubled down, arrogance her downfall. "I've built this HOA! You can't dissolve it over rumors!" That's when I dropped the second knowledge bomb, mid-confrontation. Actually, state law allows dissolution if a majority petitions due to fiduciary breaches, and we've got the signatures. The petition circulated, pens scratching furiously, the paper passing hand to hand with a rustle that sounded like victory. The emotional gut punch came when Evelyn played her final card, calling in her husband, the mayor, who strode in like a savior, badge gleaming, voice booming. "This meeting's adjourned. Eminent domain takes precedence." Dread returned, cold and clammy as he waved the notice from weeks ago. The room hushed, the air conditioner rattling louder in the silence. But I pivoted, pulling out the faded surveyor's map from my first day here, the one I'd clutched during the eviction threat. "Not if it's based on fraud," I countered, unfolding it with a snap. The map showed the lake's true boundaries, docks, included no communal claim in sight. Triumph surged as Marcus hammered home the third knowledge bomb. To dissolve an HOA entirely, prove systemic corruption via audit. And our forensic report shows embezzlement totaling over 50 grand, making every action void. Evelyn's face crumpled, her pearls suddenly looking like chains, vulnerability fully revealed in her trembling hands. The vote swung decisively against her, the gavel in a neighbor's grasp now, slamming down with finality. Motion passes, HOA dissolved, assets audited, lake rights restored. The resolution washed over us like a cleansing rain. Rights restored, my lake shimmered in my mind's eye, free from fences and fines. The community healed in waves. Mrs. Alvarez replanted her garden without fear. Kids splashed at the docks unpermitted. Jenkins painted his fence any damn color he wanted. Full circle, I stood on my porch that night, the gravel crunching underfoot. Just like my first day, but now the pine resin and brackish water smelled like freedom. The cicadas' chorus was a celebration, the lake's waves lapping gently, carrying away the bitterness. No more eviction notices, no smirking SUVs, just peace, earned through defiance. Empowerment rippled outward, a legacy of resilience and fairness. I'd turned my engineering past into a blueprint for justice, showing that one person, armed with truth, could dismantle a corrupt empire. Willow Creek breathed easier, neighbors sharing stories over barbecues, the sizzle of meat and laughter, replacing whispers of fear. It wasn't just my win. It was ours. A reminder that no one's above the law, that scandals get exposed when you fight back. Your story could be next. Comment your HOA horror below and I might cover it. If you believe no one is above the law, hit subscribe so we can take down every corrupt HOA together. Like, share, and tag a friend who needs to hear this. The more people know, the harder it is for HOAs to get away with this. Want to see another insane HOA takedown? Click here. You won't believe what happened. In the end, as the sun set over my lake, painting the water in golden hues, the taste of sweet victory lingering like the honeysuckle on the breeze, I knew this was more than a property dispute. It was a stand against bullies in pearls, a blueprint for anyone facing down the petty tyrants of the world. The docks stood firm on my land, the community docks now fairly shared under new, transparent rules. Evelyn faded into obscurity, her mansion sold to cover legal fees, her arrogance a cautionary tale whispered around Willow Creek. I skipped a stone across the water, watching the ripples expand, each one an echo of the justice we'd claimed. No, more wars. Just the quiet triumph of right over might, a story that would inspire others to map their own paths to freedom.